I tried making money on Fiverr by paying Fiverr to make me money on Fiverr. And what that exactly means is a while ago I actually started up a brand new Fiverr account and looked for and paid for specific gigs that are supposed to get me more traffic to my gig and thus get me more clients and earn me money. And so I invite you to dive in with me into this interesting case study, as well as go through some actionable tips for how you can earn more money on the Fiverr platform. So I actually did this experiment last year, but never really got around to doing a video on it, so here it is. Better late than never, I suppose. But anyhow, last year again, I actually created a new Fiverr account due to my previous one actually getting banned due to some unspecified reason.
That's suspicious.
But I suspect it's because I was sort of switching between different accounts, although it didn't do anything like upvote my own gigs or anything like that. But Fiverr just doesn't like it when you have multiple accounts, and if they see that you do, it's technically against their terms of service.
Of course!
And so here I have this completely new Fiverr account, which works out because it doesn't have any prior history with any gigs, so that when I create a new gig, the rankings and how and whether I can boost it will be a lot more accurate to a completely new Fiverr seller, right? So that's the sort of experiment I wanted to do. And the gig that I made, and this is the first time I'm revealing this officially on my channel, but it's essentially a YouTube review gig, and I'm sort of charging 3 different tiers on it just to sort of increase the different types of options that people have to potentially get more sales. But anyway, this is the gig that I have, and I actually use Fiverr to try to promote it and to get more essentially traffic and clients to that particular gig. So here are my results.
It's showtime.
But first, what I actually did was I went and searched for Fiverr gig promotion gigs with the logic that if I get some people to help me promote my Fiverr gigs, I could actually get them to rank higher on the platform and thus get more eyeballs and search traffic and clients to my gig, right? Provided that my gig has actually already been optimized so that people would actually be interested in buying it, right? That's sort of the other part of the experiment, the actual gig that I have, right? Whether or not it's something that people would want to buy, and later I'll show you some of my results, and I did get some sales. But anyhow, I actually looked for one of these gigs that were highly rated, and I settled on this one right here. I'm not gonna name who it is, but this person was very highly rated. They're a level 2 seller, and they're actually, from what it looks like, doing a lot of stuff that sort of a variety of things to help you boost or help people boost their Fiverr search engine rankings. And now real quick, let's take a look at what I actually received in terms of proof of how my gig had been promoted and given backlinks on different platforms. And the first one is, as you can see, and by the way, these are screenshots that were sent to me from my gig provider or my gig seller. But anyway, here we have the first screenshot, which is of my gig being posted on a large Facebook group of 161,000 members at the time, which is a lot. But the thing is, just this alone isn't really a lot of proof of whether or not people were actually engaging with this post, right? Even though it may or may not, and I don't even know if it's been seen by a lot of people, despite the group having a lot of members. And this is mainly because the screenshot I was given was taken a minute after the post, so I couldn't see whether they were comments or likes and stuff like that, right? But I didn't think much of it back then either. But anyway, let's see. I think here we have another Fiverr or Facebook group rather that my gig was posted on with 102,000 members, also quite a lot. So this kind of looks like on the surface, my gig could have gotten potentially a lot of views, but it really depends, and I'll get into that in a little more depth later. But for some other screenshots that I gotten as proof, we also have WhatsApp. Here, the person posted my Fiverr gig in a certain random WhatsApp group. It might as well be just a dead group for all I know, right? I just don't know because I'm not in a group. But anyway, here we also have Facebook messages. So the person also for some reason sent my Facebook or my Fiverr gig to 3 different people on Facebook. I'm not sure the benefit of this, but this one is a bit more. Okay, here we also have Twitter. Okay, so this is also sort of like whatever, right? It's kind of hard to see the effects of this, but apart from just having my gig being posted on different platforms, I suppose, which could potentially help, right? As is the logic with like websites, right? That's sort of how websites get to rank well, but not necessarily Fiverr gigs. But anyhow, one thing that I do appreciate from buying this gig though, if anything, and it actually only costed me I think $5 at the time. I think this person actually adjusted the price to make it more expensive now. But anyway, looking at this is something that was more significant and an actual result or a positive result that I could actually, tangibly see on my gig. So if you look towards the top right of my gig, and this will apply to any gig, right? But it's that when I first started or before the gig was run, I had 0 saves or sort of bookmarks, right, on my gig. And this is how people can sort of favorite their top gigs and just revisit them and things like that to save them to their profile, right, and their list. So before my gig, I had 0, but afterwards, I was actually able to get 214 saves, right? So that's actually pretty good. For all I know though, this could potentially be, the person having multiple accounts or having a lot of friends and just telling them to just go and, like bomb or save bomb my gig. Or it could be that plus the results of posting my gig on multiple of these social media platforms. But the thing is, I just don't know what the actual, real effect of doing all of this is, right? Even though it does seem like quite a lot.
I haven't a clue what's going on here.
And with that, I did try to evaluate the effectiveness of my gig by looking at the rankings of it before and after the fact, right? And also, if I could, I would have looked at the impressions and click statistics in my dashboard. But unfortunately, at the time, Fiverr was bugged for some reason and it wasn't actually showing, it wasn't actually displaying any of my impressions information back then. So that's something that was missing, and I don't really want to spend, money again, start up a new Fiverr page and just pay money to do the experiment all over again. I just wanted to cover the one that I did. But and by the way, these impression stats here, they're probably, I don't know why they're showing, these are just probably from myself viewing it because I paused my gig a long time ago, in case you were wondering, and I'm not selling this stuff on Fiverr anymore because I'm obviously busy with other stuff, right? But anyhow, even without these statistics at the time, I was still able to sort of in a different way try to check whether or not the gig worked for promoting my own gig, right? And how I did it was I went on Fiverr search engine and I actually typed in a certain keyword or a certain phrase and checked whether the rankings of my gig actually changed. And what I found was that my Fiverr gig was actually indeed higher ranked in terms of it was actually on the first page of that same search phrase rather than the second page previously. But the catch is I still don't know how much doing that Fiverr gig contributed to the ranking increase of my own gig, because it could actually just be Fiverr itself playing around with its own analytics. For example, if it's detecting that my gig is having a higher click-through rate or save rate and so on and so forth. Although speaking of save rate, I did get a ton of saved, or like 200 saves from doing that gig, right? So maybe that helped, but I just don't know for sure. So there was that piece of data, but the more important thing would be how soon I was able to actually, get clients and make sales on my gigs, right? And so to look at that, I actually got a lot of messages about my gig, inquiring about different YouTube questions that people had. And the very first gig that I got was actually several months after I had listed it. I believe it was about 5 months. And for that gig, as you can see here, it was done in October 28th and I earned $5 for it, or it was sold for $5. And this was actually a custom order because originally on my gig, and by the way, this is sort of a trick that you guys can practice as well or do as well. It's that even if you have your maximum of 3 packages on your gig, if people message you, which you should encourage in your description of your gig, you can actually have, or you can actually specify custom gigs for people if they just need, for example, a very small part of your gig, right? So for instance, if we look at my standard review, I have it for $10, but that person who was asking me a question only needed me to check why his channel wasn't monetized, right? He already had a lot of the other stuff built in place, so he just wanted to know the reason, and I helped him check and just charged him a quick $5 for it. And this was all done through Fiverr messaging. So this is sort of yet another avenue that you can earn more money with a single gig on Fiverr, right? And again, you can list up to 7 gigs even as a starting Fiverr seller. And I just have this one here because this is sort of an experiment account. But anyway, you can have up to 7 and you can have up to 3 different packages for each of your 7. And on top of that, you can also have or make custom orders for people who have specific requests, right? And so there is, sort of a lot of different ways to diversify and more sort of income streams, so to speak, or potential ways to make money on Fiverr if you do this strategy.
Nice.
And then just less than 2 weeks after my first sale, I was able to get my first big project, for which I was able to get, I think, $44. That's actually after the Fiverr fee or the Fiverr deduction. So even though it says 50 here, it's actually a bit less. But anyway, after that, my channel, or my gig rather, was starting to get a lot more traffic from what I could tell, as people were messaging me a lot more from that point onwards and were asking me questions, giving me requests, most of which I just denied or just answered their simple questions. And soon after, I just paused my gig because I didn't want to spend extra time on it, and I felt like my experiment had already, sort of come to fruition. And sort of the conclusion to this is that, going back to whether or not buying the gig was worth it to promote my Fiverr gig, again, it actually took me several months, about 5 months, to actually get my first sale. But after that, if things felt like it really started to pick up. So my current opinion is that it's not really worth it to do such a promotion, and that if you do want to spend extra money to give your Fiverr gigs a boost, and there are also free methods that you can do so that I'll go over really quickly later. But if you let's say you have $5 or $10 you can spend on promoting your gig, right? Instead of doing that, because a lot of this stuff, as you can see, a lot of this I felt like was pretty useless, right? Just posting your stuff on like Facebook groups without really any context isn't necessarily going to help. Because Fiverr is, you can think of it as like a YouTube-esque search engine, right? And it's also a publicly traded company, so it's very well optimized in terms of its search engine and getting, good gigs to sell and things like that, right? So a more important factor is how good your gig actually is. And by good, I mean having a great thumbnail, right? Thumbnails are extremely important because they grab attention. Your title is extremely important. Again, this is somewhat similar to YouTube. And then your description, obviously extremely important, and for your your own personal bio, you also want to come off as a professional. But let me take a step back first and just revisit the gig. So again, I don't necessarily recommend doing this, and if you do have the money, I would actually recommend you spend it on paying a friend or a family member to actually buy your gig from you to earn you that review, right? So in my opinion, having that first star or 5-star review, or 4.5 stars, however many you want to make it, or you want, 5 stars is probably the default, right? It's probably a lot better. But anyway, just paying a friend even to buy your gig, right? Just pay them the same amount to buy your gig, and then just give them a good review. By the way, don't use the same IP address, otherwise you might risk getting banned, right? Don't use the same internet connection or use the same computer to switch accounts, all right? Have your friend or family member use their own device to do so. But just having that first review can really give your gig a lot more validation. When people see it, they'll see that, oh, this is actually a well-reviewed gig, right? As opposed to having 0 reviews. So if you're going to spend money, I believe that is a much better or more efficient way of spending it to, help you promote your Fiverr gig. And if you don't want to spend any money and want to promote your gig for free, some of the things that this gig did for me are actually completely free, right? Namely the Facebook groups and perhaps other social media groups where people actually exchange Fiverr saves and, likes. Well, they're called saves, right? And for example, you can actually just go onto Facebook. This is probably the best option. Search up something like Fiverr gig promotion, and you'll find tons of public groups with tens of thousands of members in which people are just posting their Fiverr gigs and just liking each other's Fiverr gigs. Some of them might not get you that much traffic, right? Because it's a lot of sort of spam, right? But you might be able to find a couple where people are more willing to share and engage in each other's posts and gigs and things like that, right? So browse around Facebook and look for some of the gigs or some of the Facebook groups rather that you can join. And another thing is, again, like I said before, Fiverr is a search engine, right? And search engines are constantly analyzing their, stats, obviously, and looking at, for example, how good of a click-through rate and even buying rate each gig has, right? And in order to earn the most money for their platform, because they earn that commission or they take a bit of a cut from each sale, right? So they're incentivized to promote the best gigs and the top selling gigs, right? Which makes sense, again, to pace your, get your friend to give you a review, because that could actually make your gig a lot more appealing to people and get them to click into it, right? But aside from that, to do it for free, to optimize your gig for free, even without any reviews. And again, I was able to get my first sales without, with 0 stars at the beginning, right? With 0 reviews. So, it is possible. How long before you'll get it is variable, right? Like, there's no guarantee when and whether you'll even make money on Fiverr, but again, a lot of people have. But again, there's never a guarantee, it's a bit of a warning there. So you probably don't want to quit your job and just do Fiverr or something like that, right? Unless you already have a lot of, traction on the platform, right? You're already getting tons of orders left and right. That's a completely different story. But anyhow, some other ways you can optimize your gig is, again, very similar to the lessons we've learned from YouTube, which is making your title and your thumbnail and your description and everything as optimized and as appealing as possible. So for instance, you want to have your title, be catchy. Mine is just very straightforward. My thumbnail, for it, you want to have very large text, right? If you're gonna have any text, you want to make sure that they're huge. They make up the majority of your image. And then besides that, it will also usually be very ideal to have some examples of your work, right? So notice how I have a few screenshots of some of the YouTube reviews I've done for people. And this will actually help people understand not only what your gig is about and clarify it, but, sort of give them proof that essentially that, you're legit gig and sell it, right? And besides that, just some basic things about Fiverr is to try to optimize or try to make as many opportunities for yourself as possible by having the 3 different packages, right? With different pricing tiers and different, stuff that you offer in them. And then you can also do, again, the custom orders if people message you, in which case you should definitely, in your description, you should write, I'm not sure that I've written it here. I think I might have, but I probably took it out because a lot of people were messaging me. But anyway, you should definitely, in your gig, a lot of people do this actually, and what they do is they write in their description to send that person a message before they place an order, or if they have any questions, so that they can potentially have more chances of setting up that custom gig, right? Which is, again, a gig that is outside of these three basic packages that you offer. You can specify it however you want, as long as the buyer agrees to it, and you can sell a gig to them that way, right? That's actually a very overlooked way of doing so. And lastly, let's see. Oh, and you can also have an FAQ. This is pretty helpful as well. So you can definitely use your FAQ section to answer some commonly asked questions about your type of gig. Anything to make it look more professional, right? And just more appealing, and that people will want to buy. So just a lot of basic stuff. Try to make your gig more competitive. Your pricing should be competitive as well. And that's all there really is to it, right? As long as your gig is good and it's a service that people want, it might take a while, but Fiverr should pick up your gig. Again, if it's good compared to what's already on the market, Fiverr should pick up your gig and give you a chance and start to promote your gig to some people. And again, if it's a good gig, it'll be incentivized to promote it more. And the more sales you get, the more of that snowball you can get rolling. And that is pretty much all I wanted to show you guys in today's video. You can check out my free Fiverr guides in the description box below and on my YouTube channel for different Fiverr gig ideas that you can try out. And especially considering even a new Fiverr seller can have up to 7 gigs simultaneously on the platform, right? Plus, you can check out my free YouTube ebook, which will soon not be an ebook anymore, but actually converted to my website. But for now, you can download my free YouTube ebook in the description box below. It'll be the first link. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. Peace.